Maple Street in Bedford, Indiana, wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a living postcard. Springtime painted the sidewalks in blooming cherry trees. And every Sunday morning smelled of cinnamon rolls, percolating coffee, and freshly cut grass. It was a town where people left their doors unlocked, waved from porch swings, and trusted the familiar cadence of their quiet lives. That trust shattered on March 3, 2022. Eleanor Whitaker, 78, had lived at 417 Maple Street for nearly 5 decades, the widow of a decorated Korean War veteran and a retired high school librarian. Eleanor was the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthdays and still mailed handwritten thank you notes. Her laugh was bright, her mind sharp, and her affection for her garden legendary. That particular Sunday morning began the way most did, with her daughter, Melanie Whitaker Sparks, arriving at 8:32 a.m. carrying a basket of fresh eggs, raspberry preserves, and still warm scones. The kitchen, always tidy, was filled with sunlight filtering through lace curtains. They sat at the small round table, sipping coffee and chatting about everything and nothing, local gossip, sermon topics, and the ongoing war Eleanor was waging against a particularly stubborn squirrel. "I finally got the new deadbolt installed," Eleanor said, buttering her scone. "Not that I think anyone around here has bad intentions, but it never hurts to be safe." Melanie smiled. "Well, I think the squirrel might be plotting something." They laughed. It was the kind of morning you don't realize is your last until it becomes a memory you replay on loop. At 11:47 a.m., Melanie left to pick up groceries. Eleanor waved from the porch. A breeze lifted the edge of her lavender shawl. No one would ever see her alive again. Chapter 2. A House Unlocked. Melanie returned the next morning with a container of beef stew and her daughter's old Girl Scout cookie order form, meaning to drop both off. But the sight that greeted her chilled her to the bone. The front door, which Eleanor always kept bolted, was open. Stepping inside, Melanie called out, "Mom, you there?" Silence. Not even the soft ticking of the wall clock. A floral vase lay shattered on the floor near the bookshelf. The scent of bleach hung unnaturally in the air. On instinct, Melanie gripped her phone tighter and moved through the house. In the sunroom, she stopped. A smear of blood marred the light switch. Her scream shattered the stillness. Neighbors ran over. Within minutes, Bedford PD was on the scene. Detective Carla Hargrove, a veteran investigator with a reputation for patience and precision, arrived just as the coroner pronounced the body. Eleanor had been found in the laundry room. Her nightgown was soaked in blood, her head resting against the dryer. She bore the hallmarks of a brutal assault, blunt force trauma. A crushed trachea, and ligature marks around her neck. Her fingernails were broken. There were signs of struggle. And something far worse. The house had been wiped down, but imperfectly. A partial palm print on the fridge door would become the case's first anchor. Chapter 3. Suspicion in plain sight. News of Eleanor's murder spread like wildfire. The shockwave was instant. Rumors began before the crime scene tape had even been removed. At the top of everyone's suspect list, 19-year-old Trevor Boone. Trevor was the local odd job kid. Shaggy hair, nervous energy, and a juvenile record that made neighbors whisper. He'd been hired by Eleanor the previous week to clean her gutters. But she fired him 2 days later, reportedly after accusing him of stealing tools and reeking of liquor before lunch. Detective Hargrove brought him in for questioning. "I didn't touch that old lady," Trevor insisted, shifting in his seat. "Yeah, I was mad she stiffed me. But I didn't kill her." The story might have stopped there, if not for what police found behind his trailer home. In the fire pit were the charred remains of clothes. Among the ashes, a melted sneaker sole, stained faintly with blood. DNA confirmed it was Eleanor's. Trevor went pale when confronted. "I was moving. Burned a bunch of crap. I cut my hand." "Okay, that blood ain't hers." But no cut was visible. No wound had been treated. And a neighbor reported seeing Trevor leaving his house shirtless that Sunday afternoon, clutching something wrapped in fabric. Chapter 4. Confessions and Contradictions. The pressure mounted. On the third day of interrogation, Trevor changed his story. "I did go by Eleanor's on Sunday. Just to talk. She was pissed. Said I made her nervous. Told me to get off her damn porch. That's it. Swear." But that version didn't match the data. Eleanor's landline had attempted a 911 call at exactly 12:06 p.m. The call disconnected after 3 seconds. She had been trying to reach help, and someone had stopped her. Forensics then uncovered a crucial clue: skin cells under Eleanor's fingernails. DNA analysis returned a partial match to Trevor Boone. Contamination. His public defender, Bethany Jameson, later argued, he worked there, of course his DNA's there. Yet the pattern of scratches told another story, a violent struggle. Chapter 5. The Red Spiral Notebook. Then came a breakthrough, not from science, but from words. Hidden beneath a seat cushion was Eleanor's red spiral-bound journal. Pages of meticulous entries, gardening notes, sermon reflections, and something darker. Trevor stopped by again, uninvited, keeps asking for money. Something's wrong with that boy's eyes. I think he's using again. Changed the locks just in case. To prosecutors, it was a smoking gun. Proof of fear, proof of a deteriorating relationship. In the court of public opinion, Trevor was already convicted. That was until a neighbor's ring camera shook everything. Webb City, Missouri, March 9, 2021. The first sign that something was wrong came just after 6:45 a.m. Janet Miller, 68, a longtime neighbor on Sycamore Lane, had just stepped outside to feed her cat when she noticed something odd across the street. The front door to 91-year-old Helen Carter's house was wide open, and had been all night. That alone was shocking. Helen always locked her doors at sundown. Always. But that morning, the light on her front porch was still on, flickering gently in the fog. Her mailbox was overflowing, and her favorite porch chair, the one she always sat in to sip her tea at 7 a.m. sharp, was empty. It wasn't right. I felt it in my gut, Janet would later say to police. She called Helen's number. No answer. She walked across the street, stepped up onto the porch, peered in. That's when she saw the blood. Blank. Underscore. Blank. By 7:04 a.m., police had sealed off the scene. By 8:15, the Jasper County coroner had pronounced Helen Carter dead. In 26 years on this force, I've seen a lot, said Detective Michael Rourke, the first senior officer on the scene. But this was, I don't even know what to call it. It wasn't just murder, it was carnage. Helen's body was discovered in the hallway between the kitchen and living room. She had suffered multiple blunt force injuries, likely from a household object. Her wrists were bound with a lamp cord, her nightgown torn, and a pillow was found over her face, soaked in blood. There was no sign of forced entry. No shattered windows, no pried open locks. Whoever had done this, she had let them in. Blank. Underscore. Blank. WHO was Helen Carter? Born in 1929 in Webb City, Helen Carter had been a fixture of the community her whole life. She taught 3rd grade at Madison Elementary School for 37 years. Nearly everyone in the neighborhood had either been in her class, or had a parent who had. She never married, never had children, but she volunteered weekly at the Webb City Library, hosted reading clubs, baked cookies for church fundraisers, and still sent birthday cards to her former students, even at age 91. She was the kind of person small towns are built around, said Mayor Don Talbot. She was kindness, consistency, and faith, all wrapped in one. So who would want to hurt her? That question would rock this quiet Missouri town for the next 2 years. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The first leads. Inside the home, nothing appeared stolen. Her purse was in the kitchen, untouched. A teacup still sat on the counter, half filled. But police found 2 curious things. A muddy shoe print on the living room rug. A crumpled piece of notebook paper under the dining table, with the words, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I didn't mean to," written in uneven block letters. Likely by a child. That's when police started looking at young people Helen knew. One name came up again and again. Cameron Ray. Age 14. Blank. Underscore. Blank. WHO was Cameron Ray? Cameron was a troubled kid. Everyone knew it. His mom, Tina Ray, worked 2 jobs to stay afloat after her divorce. His father had left the state 5 years prior and hadn't been heard from since. Cameron had a history of suspensions, angry outbursts, and property damage. But Helen Carter had taken an interest in him, tutored him, invited him over to help with chores, even paid him to rake leaves and clean out her garage. She was trying to save him. One neighbor said. She said he just needed someone to believe in him. But just 2 weeks before Helen's murder, she reportedly cut off contact with Cameron after a confrontation in her home. No one knew why, until detectives pulled security footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The footage, at 11:17 p.m. the night before Helen's body was discovered. A grainy clip showed a figure in a hoodie and jeans walking up her steps. No visible weapon, no bag, just stillness. He knocked once, waited, then Helen, barely 5 feet tall, opened the door and let him in. She never came out again. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The next morning, when police brought Cameron in for questioning, he denied everything, said he'd been asleep all night, said he hadn't spoken to Helen in a while, but he had scratches on his left hand, and his shoes, a pair of old black Nikes, matched the print on Helen's rug. Later, DNA under Helen's fingernails would confirm it. Cameron Ray was there that night. And it wouldn't be long before he confessed. Cameron Ray was born on April 18, 2006, in Joplin, Missouri, just 20 minutes south of Webb City. From the very beginning, life seemed to stack the odds against him. His mother, Tina Ray, was 17 when she gave birth. The father, Brandon Knight, disappeared a month later. He walked out when I was still recovering from the C-section. Tina would later tell social workers. Never paid child support, never called. I was a single mom before I even knew how to be a mom. Tina struggled with jobs, waitressing, janitorial work, part-time cashier at Dollar Tree. She loved her son, but she was hardly ever home. The apartment on Jefferson Street where they lived for the first 8 years of Cameron's life had no stable heat. The locks were broken for months at a time, and rats had chewed through the walls behind the fridge. Cameron didn't have a crib. He slept in a drawer lined with towels until age 2. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Early warning signs. By the time Cameron was in kindergarten, teachers already knew something was wrong. He was angry, all the time, said Mrs. Kelsey Barnes, his former teacher at Jefferson Elementary. He didn't play with other kids. He snapped pencils in half. He tore up books. And once, he punched a kid over a crayon. He was referred to a school counselor, then to a county behavioral program, diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, then ADHD, then later intermittent explosive disorder. He had trouble sleeping. He would lash out at sudden sounds. He hoarded food in his backpack. Sometimes he'd steal Lunchables from other students, even if he had one in his own bag. At age 7, his school called Child Protective Services for the first time. He had a bruise in the shape of a belt buckle across his lower back. The report noted, mother denied abuse, said he fell climbing a fence. But Tina had no history of drugs or criminal activity. She cried during interviews, said she was doing her best. So the case was closed. Blank. Underscore. Blank. I can fix him. In 2020, just months after the COVID-19 pandemic isolated the world, Helen Carter saw Cameron for the first time, sitting alone outside Madison Elementary, staring at the sidewalk, kicking pebbles. He was 12, gangly, unkempt, with shoelaces that never stayed tied. He reminded me of the boys I used to teach, she later told Sarah Hendricks, a fellow churchgoer. So much anger, but also so much sadness. I thought, maybe I could help. Helen began inviting him over, first for cookies, then to help her sort old books in the garage, then to mow the lawn, for $10 cash. She gave him socks, a new backpack, even a small set of fishing lures she had saved since 1982. And for a while, Cameron changed. Blank. Underscore. Blank. But something snapped. In February 2021, just a month before Helen's murder, something shifted. Helen began telling her friend Janet Miller that she was feeling uneasy. He stares at me now, she told Janet, not like a boy should. Like I'm prey. She caught him once, poking through her bathroom drawers. Another time, she found her cat locked in the shed, terrified and dehydrated. And then came the incident in the kitchen. Blank. underscore, blank. Get out, Cameron. On March 3, 2021, Helen confronted Cameron when she found a kitchen knife missing from her drawer. When she asked him, he didn't deny it, he just smiled. He said, "You're not afraid of me, are you?" Then he grabbed a jar of jelly and smashed it on the floor. Helen screamed, told him to get out. He did. That was the last time she willingly let him in the house. She told Janet she was going to talk to the pastor and possibly call someone. But 5 days later, Helen Carter would be dead. Blank. Underscore, blank. Police interrogation. March 9, 2021 to 1:42 p.m. Webb City Police Station, Interview Room 2. Detective Rourke sat across from Cameron. The boy slouched in his chair, fingers picking at a hole in his hoodie sleeve. His knees bounced under the table. "Tell me where you were last night." Cameron. "I was home, sleeping." "Can anyone confirm that?" "My mom, maybe. She works late though." "You didn't go to Ms. Carter's house?" "No. Even though we have your footprint there?" Silence. "Even though we found your DNA under her fingernails?" Silence. "Even though we have a neighbor's camera showing you walking in?" Cameron looked up. Tears welled in his eyes. His lips trembled. Then he whispered, "I just wanted to talk to her." Blank. Underscore, blank. The confession. Cameron finally broke. The whole story tumbled out in scattered, broken pieces. He snuck out after midnight. He knocked. She let him in, reluctantly. They argued. She said she was going to tell the church. Tell his mom. Cut him off. He panicked. He grabbed the ceramic lamp from the side table. He hit her. Once. Then again. Then again. She fell. He saw the blood. She was breathing but groaning. He didn't know what to do. He wanted her to stop making that noise. So he dragged her to the hallway, grabbed a pillow, and pressed it over her face. Until she stopped. "I didn't mean to," he said. I didn't know what else to do." Blank. Underscore, blank. The murder of Helen Carter made national headlines. A 14-year-old boy, a child, had murdered a 91-year-old woman who had only tried to help him. The question that haunted everyone wasn't just how it happened, but whether it could have been stopped. Webb City, Missouri, March 10, 2021. The news broke just after 10 a.m. By noon, it was on every local station, every news app, every radio channel in Jasper County. 14-year-old boy arrested for murder of 91-year-old retired teacher Helen Carter. The headline hit like a thunderclap. A town that had once prided itself on neighborly charm, Sunday potlucks, and unlocked doors, now had a child killer. And the victim? The most beloved woman on Sycamore Lane. Blank. Underscore, blank. The whispers began immediately. "Did you hear it was Cameron? That kid's always been off. I told you she was too nice to him. Where was his mother? Where were the cops?" The same town that once smiled politely at Tina Ray in the grocery aisle now avoided her like a plague. People stopped answering her texts. She was fired from her cleaning job at the West Valley Dental Clinic. Her landlord called and said her lease would not be renewed. "It was like I did it," Tina said later in a county affidavit. "Like I put the bat in his hands. Like I dragged her down that hallway." She couldn't even visit Cameron in detention without an escort. Blank. Underscore, blank. The school locked its doors. Madison Middle School, where Cameron had been enrolled, brought in trauma counselors. The 8th grade teachers were told not to discuss the case with students. But the halls buzzed with rumor. He carved his name in her wall. He drank her blood. He kept her dentures. None of it was true. But in the vacuum of horror, fiction spreads fast. Blank. Underscore, blank. The town split. Within days, Webb City was a divided community. Side 1. Try him as an adult. He's a monster. Doesn't matter if he's 14 or 40. Side 2. He's a child. He needs help, not prison. What kind of trauma pushes a kid to this? That week, Reverend Thomas Holcomb, from Gracewood Baptist Church, gave a sermon titled, "The Devil Doesn't Wait for Adulthood. Evil doesn't need to be old to be real," he said, staring out over a stunned congregation. "And mercy must never become blindness." His words made the front page of the Webb City Gazette, and deepened the cracks. Blank. Underscore, blank. Back at the station, Detectives were still processing the crime scene at 114 Sycamore Lane. In the bedroom closet, they found an old shoebox Helen had kept for decades. Inside, class photos from the 1970s. Letters from former students. A note Cameron had written her in 2020. "You're the only person who sees me." Detective Rourke read the note and said nothing for nearly a minute. Then he turned to the crime scene tech and said, "Bag it. This is part of the story too. Blank. Underscore. Blank." The autopsy report. On March 12, the autopsy was released. Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the head, combined with asphyxiation. Time of death: between 12:20 and 12:50 a.m. Injuries sustained: 5 blunt force impacts to the left skull, fractured jaw, bruised wrists, petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes, consistent with smothering. No signs of sexual assault. It was not a fast death. It was not an accident. And the killer? The boy with her cat's name written in his schoolbook, who once helped her carry groceries, had watched her die. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The child's psych evaluation. Under Missouri law, the court ordered a full psychiatric evaluation before determining whether Cameron could be tried as an adult. He was examined by Dr. Elaine Whitford, a forensic child psychologist with 19 years' experience. Her report, presented to the court, stated, Cameron Ray presents with deeply rooted emotional disturbance, unresolved trauma, and chronic neglect. However, he is cognitively aware of right and wrong. There is evidence of impulse control failure, not psychosis. And in the most chilling line, when asked what he felt during the act, Cameron said, "Nothing, just quiet, like I was floating." Blank. Underscore. Blank. March 15th. The hearing. Cameron's first hearing was packed. Reporters from Springfield, Kansas City, and even St. Louis were present. Judge Ronald Pierce, a no-nonsense Vietnam vet and lifelong Missouri conservative, presided over the case. "This is not a moment for sympathy," he said before the ruling. "This is a moment for accountability." And then he dropped the gavel. Cameron Ray would be tried as an adult on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated burglary, felony assault, evidence tampering. Tina Ray collapsed in the courtroom. Helen Carter's niece Maggie Dawson, seated in the first row, closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, God." Blank. Underscore. Blank. Outside, the town was still split. Some said justice was finally moving. Others said a 14-year-old child was being thrown away. "He'll never come back from this," said Cameron's old PE teacher. But then again, neither will she. Webb City, Missouri, October 4, 2022. 18 months had passed since the night Helen Carter was murdered. The leaves were turning in Jasper County. Halloween decorations lined the porches. But the mood in town was heavy. The trial of Cameron Ray, now 15 years old, was about to begin, and for the first time in the town's history, the Webb City Courthouse installed metal detectors at the front door. The security wasn't overkill, it was a necessity. The town wasn't just watching. They were boiling. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Jury selection. Prosecutors and defense attorneys fought over every potential juror. Anyone who had taught Cameron, met Helen, or commented publicly on the case was dismissed. Of the original 78 candidates, only 12 jurors and 3 alternates remained. They were farmers, librarians, a retiree, a former soldier, said court reporter Gina Morales. Salt of the earth people. But you could tell they were afraid to be the ones who'd decide this boy's fate. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The prosecution's case. Assistant District Attorney Robert Leland, a sharp, aggressive litigator known for wearing cufflinks with the Missouri state seal, opened with no warm-up. "This case isn't about age. It's about action." A woman, 91 years old, was beaten, dragged, and smothered in her own home by someone she trusted. That's murder, not adolescence, not hormones. Murder. He walked the jury through the evidence. Cameron's DNA under Helen's fingernails. Blood droplets matched to him on the hallway carpet. The murder weapon, the broken ceramic lamp, containing his fingerprints. The note, "I didn't mean to," written in Cameron's handwriting. Then came the 911 call recording from Janet Miller, followed by body cam footage from Officer Luis Ramirez, the first responder to the scene. As the video played, audible gasps filled the courtroom. Helen's body, the blood-stained hallway, the overturned furniture. It was all projected onto a screen for the jury to see, and Cameron to relive. Cameron stared at the floor. He never once looked up. Blank. Blank. The defense. Public defender Grace Tillman was a fierce advocate for juvenile justice. She had handled over 40 cases involving minors charged as adults. Her voice trembled with conviction. Cameron Ray is a child. A broken, neglected, mentally ill child. Yes, a tragedy occurred, but the question is not whether something awful happened, it's whether our system is ready to throw away a boy forever because no one helped him before it was too late. She brought in character witnesses. A former therapist, who testified Cameron had been denied follow-up care for severe mood instability. A social worker, who noted Cameron had called CPS on himself at age 12, saying he wanted to live somewhere else, anywhere else. A neuroscientist, who testified that Cameron's prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, was not fully formed, and extremely reactive under emotional duress. Blank. The crossroads. But then came the moment that changed everything. The prosecution called Dr. Whitford, the court-appointed forensic psychologist, to the stand, and she dropped the line that would define the trial. He understood what he was doing. He described the murder in chilling detail. He said, "I wanted her to stop talking. I made her quiet. That's all." The jury sat in stunned silence. Even the defense flinched. Blank. The verdict. After 4 days of testimony, 6 hours of deliberation, and more tears than most courtrooms see in a year. On October 12, 2022, the verdict was read. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of aggravated burglary. Guilty of evidence tampering. The courtroom held its breath. Helen Carter's niece wept, clutching her husband's hand. Cameron's mother sank into her seat, pale and speechless. Cameron showed no reaction. Not a word, not a tear, only the clench of his fists beneath the table. Blank. Sentencing deferred. Because Cameron was still a minor. The sentencing hearing was delayed by 90 days to allow for a full juvenile impact report. But one thing was certain. He would not be going home. Blank. In the town square, outside the courthouse, people gathered, some in grief, some in anger. Reverend Holcomb, who had once prayed for Helen in front of the whole town, now stood with a megaphone. This is not justice. This is a reckoning. And if we don't fix what broke this boy, there'll be another one behind him. A town forever change. By the time the sun set over Sycamore Lane, Helen Carter's house, now empty, shuttered, and quiet, was surrounded by flowers, handwritten notes, stuffed animals, and one message written in chalk on the sidewalk outside her front step. You were the light. We're sorry we didn't protect you. January 18, 2023, Webb City Courthouse, Missouri. It was bitterly cold the morning of Cameron Ray's sentencing hearing. Inside courtroom 3, Judge Ronald Pierce sat solemnly at the bench. The wood-paneled walls felt smaller than usual. The silence was suffocating. This wasn't just the conclusion of a trial. This was a community holding its breath, hoping for closure, bracing for history. The recommendation. The Juvenile Sentencing Assessment Report, submitted to the court 2 weeks prior, painted a devastating portrait. Cameron had a 76 IQ, low, but not mentally disabled. He suffered from complex PTSD, rooted in years of neglect, rejection, and exposure to violence. He displayed zero remorse in multiple evaluations. He described Helen Carter's murder as something he doesn't want to remember, but not something he regrets. The final page included a chilling line from a post-evaluation journal entry Cameron wrote in juvenile detention. She was too good. People like that don't know how ugly it feels to be left out. The courtroom. Helen Carter's extended family had filled the left side of the gallery. Nieces, nephews, former students. Cameron's mother, Tina Ray, sat alone. No attorney beside her, no family, Just silence. And shame. As Judge Pierce prepared to speak, the room was ice. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Victim impact statements. First, the family was allowed to speak. Maggie Dawson, Helen's niece, stood and addressed the court. My aunt wasn't just a victim. She was a cornerstone. She survived the Great Depression, buried her parents and siblings, taught 3 generations to read and love, and in the final act of her life, she chose to love a broken child. That child killed her. I pray for Cameron Ray's soul, but I also pray he never walks freely again. Next came Pauline Gardner, a 53-year-old who had been Helen's student in 3rd grade. She was the first person who told me I could be a writer. I still have the essay she graded in red pen with 3 stars and a smiley face. That smile cost her her life. When Tina Ray asked to speak, the court allowed it. She stood shakily. I failed him. I know that. I did everything I could, but maybe it was never enough. I'm sorry for what he did. I'm sorry you all lost someone you loved. I lost someone too. He's sitting right over there, and I don't even recognize him anymore. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Cameron's statement. The judge then gave Cameron the opportunity to speak. He stood slowly. He looked much older than his 15 years. Gaunt, pale, emotionless. And he said, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I know I did it. I think about it all the time. I wish I hadn't, but I can't make it not happen. I just wanted someone to listen. That's all. He sat down. The courtroom remained silent. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The sentence. Judge Pierce cleared his throat. He paused. Then he spoke. This is not a sentence I give lightly. But this is a crime that demands seriousness. He looked directly at Cameron. You murdered someone who only ever showed you kindness. You extinguished a light in a world already growing dim. Then came the sentence. Life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Consecutive terms for aggravated burglary, 15 years, and evidence tampering, 5 years. Registered as a violent juvenile offender for life. Cameron Ray would be eligible for parole at age 50. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The aftermath. The ruling sent shockwaves through Missouri. Too harsh, said one juvenile justice advocate. Not nearly enough, said others in the community. Governor Micah Hardley issued a press statement supporting the decision, calling it a tragic but necessary act of justice. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back on Sycamore Lane, Helen Carter's house stood empty. The shutters were drawn. A for sale sign went up in March, but no one offered to buy. It's haunted, whispered one child to his mother. Not by a ghost, she replied, by what it reminds us of. The house remained unsold for over a year. Then, in a quiet ceremony, Madison Elementary School announced they were purchasing it to create the Helen Carter Children's Literacy Center, funded by donations from her former students. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A final note. In the back of the courthouse lobby, hung beside a dusty vending machine, someone had tacked up a flyer. Kindness doesn't always save people, but it always leaves a mark. Underneath, in small letters, in memory of Helen Carter, 1929 to 2021. She never gave up on anyone, not even him. January 20th, 2023, 2 days after sentencing. It started with a tweet. A 15-year-old boy sentenced to life in Missouri. The victim? His 91-year-old neighbor. The motive? A shattered childhood no one wanted to see. At Crime Pulse USA. 7:16 a.m. By noon, it was a trending topic. By the evening, CNN, Fox News, NBC, and the New York Times had all picked it up. By the weekend, a Netflix producer had called the Webb City courthouse asking for public records. And by Monday morning, Webb City had become the symbol of a larger American debate. How far should mercy stretch in the face of murder? Blank. Underscore. Blank. National headlines. Killer at 14. Justice or overreach? The Atlantic. Life behind bars for a child killer. Are we failing America's kids? Washington Post. Cameron Ray deserved every minute of that sentence. Daily Mail opinion. The Missouri murder that's tearing the internet in half. BuzzFeed True Crime. Every outlet had a take. Every take had consequences. Blank. blank. Talk shows, podcasts, panels. The case became fodder for endless discussion. Dr. Phil aired a special, Inside the Mind of a Teen Killer and the System That Raised Him. Joe Rogan did a 2-hour podcast with a forensic psychologist arguing against sentencing juveniles to life. On The View, hosts debated furiously. He's 15. You don't throw away a child like that. Tell that to the woman he beat to death. She doesn't get parole in 35 years. Blank. Blank. Cameron's face goes viral. For the first time since his arrest, Cameron Ray's mugshot was released. The internet latched onto it. A boy with hollow eyes, cracked lips, and a vacant stare. Memes exploded. When you play GTA too early. The face of, I didn't get a PS5. He looks like he's already seen hell, and brought it back. But others weren't laughing. Change.org petitions began circulating. Resentence Cameron Ray, try him as a juvenile. Over 200,000 signatures. Justice for Helen, keep Cameron behind bars. Over 500,000 signatures. Blank. Blank. Documentaries in production. Netflix, Hulu, and even HBO announced competing docuseries. Whispers on Sycamore Lane, Netflix, 2024. The Boy They Forgot, Hulu, 3-part miniseries. Helen, HBO Films, in development. Producers flew into Web City, booking interviews with neighbors, teachers, and, controversially, Helen Carter's own family. Maggie Dawson declined them all. She's not a character. She was a person, and I'm not turning her death into content. Blank. Blank. Political aftershock. Missouri State Senator Elijah Brooks, a Democrat from St. Louis, introduced Senate Bill 882, titled, The Fair Sentencing of Minors Act. The bill aimed to ban life without parole for juveniles under 16. Even in first-degree murder cases, we cannot call ourselves a civilized society while throwing away children, Brooks said. He cited Cameron Ray's case by name. The chamber exploded. Missouri's conservative majority balked. Senator Ron Kessler fired back. Tell that to the 17 broken bones in Helen Carter's skull. The bill never left committee. Blank. Blank. Tina Ray speaks. On February 10, Tina Ray gave her first public interview to CBS News, sitting across from journalist Dana Willis. In the interview, Tina looked exhausted. Her hands trembled as she held her coffee. I know people hate him. Some days I hate him too. But he's my son, and I still see the little boy who cried when he lost his teddy bear. He wasn't born to kill. He was built for it, by everything that happened around him. When Dana asked if she blamed herself, Tina whispered, every day, every time I close my eyes. The interview aired nationwide. Half the country called her brave. The other half wanted her arrested. Blank. Blank. Web City today. The small town tried to move on. Sycamore Lane was renamed Carter Way by city ordinance. Madison Elementary held a Day of Kindness in Helen's memory every March 9. A bronze bench with her name now sits outside the Web City Public Library. But the town didn't forget. Not really. We got famous for something we never wanted to be remembered for, said Mayor Don Talbot. Every camera crew reminds us that healing doesn't erase history. Blank. Blank. And Cameron? He's inmate number 6438881B at Jefferson Correctional Center in Central Missouri. Still on suicide watch. Still in isolation 20 hours a day. Still 15. And still a name people across America can't agree how to say. Monster. Victim. Both. Jefferson Correctional Center, Missouri. Spring 2023. The cell was 6 feet by 10. White walls. No window. One steel toilet. One bolted down cot. A tray slot in the door where food came in twice a day, and sometimes didn't. This was Cameron Ray's world. He had just turned 16. Blank. Blank. No visitors. Since the sentencing, no one had visited Cameron. Not his mother. Not a priest. Not even his public defender. It's better that way, said Warden Carla Mendez. He's not suicidal anymore, but he's emotionally hollow. He stares at the wall like it's talking to him. Cameron was under segregation protocol due to his age and notoriety. He wasn't allowed into the general population. He was allowed 1 hour per day in the outdoor yard, alone. 3 books per week, no internet, no TV, no social contact, blank, underscore, blank. The Journal. Once a week, Cameron met with Dr. Leo Marin, the prison's juvenile psychiatrist. In their 5th session, Dr. Marin handed him a blank notebook. Write something, he said. Anything. Doesn't have to be deep. Just put words somewhere other than your head. Cameron stared at the cover for 20 minutes that night. Then he wrote, March 19th. The light in the hallway blinks every 6 seconds. That's how I measure night now. Blinks. A week later, March 26th. I had a dream I was back in Ms. Carter's living room. She gave me a cookie. Said, you don't have to stay here forever. But she was on fire. Another. April 1st. I think I was trying to hurt the world before it could finish hurting me. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The letters begin. By mid-April, something unexpected happened. Letters started arriving. The first was from Oregon. Dear Cameron, I saw your story. I think you were failed. I hope you get help. Then one from Illinois. The world is cruel. I don't believe you were born bad. I believe you were forgotten. Then one from California, from a 17-year-old girl. You're famous now. Maybe that means something. I bet people treat you like a monster. But I don't think monsters write poetry. The prison scanned each letter. Most were supportive. A few were disturbingly romantic. One sent a photo of herself in lingerie, saying she wanted to be the first one when he got out. That letter was destroyed, but Cameron asked for a pen and wrote back to the Oregon woman. Thank you. I don't know what to say. I'm not good at saying sorry. I didn't think anyone would care. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The rising cult. On social media, a strange trend was growing. Cameron Ray Truthers. A Reddit thread titled, Free Cameron, gained over 80,000 subscribers. A TikTok account, at Justice4Cam, posted dramatic edits of his mugshot over sad music. One video had 3.2 million views. They argued that he was mentally ill and needed treatment, not prison. That Helen Carter had pushed him too far. That the system ignored his cries for help. Others pushed back hard. Glorifying killers is how more killers are made. Tell that to the Carter family. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Inside the prison, despite the national attention, Cameron was still just inmate 643881B to most. He was assigned to a new educational program, remote GED prep via printed packets. He started drawing, mostly faces. Always hollow-eyed. He refused to talk about the murder. But one night, when a guard named Ronnie brought him food, he asked, do you believe people can come back from anything? Ronnie didn't answer. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Meanwhile, outside, Helen Carter's Literacy Center opened in May. The town gathered for a ribbon-cutting ceremony on what would have been her 94th birthday. Mayor Talbot gave a short speech. She gave her life trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. That doesn't make her a fool. It makes her a hero. Maggie Dawson, who had refused interviews for months, spoke to a small group of children. This house used to be a place of death. Now it's a place of words. And light. And stories. That's what she would have wanted. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Cameron's last entry, for now. June 3rd. I had a dream I was outside. The wind felt like a person. I asked it where to go. It said, not yet. You still have to sit in it. He wasn't born a monster. He was built piece by piece. Dr. Elaine Whitford, forensic psychologist. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A childhood in shadow. Cameron Ray came into the world at 3:42 a.m. April 18, 2006, in a hospital that didn't have enough bassinets. His mother, Tina Ray, was 17. His father, Brandon Knight, didn't show up. He never signed the birth certificate. In the first 5 years of his life, Cameron moved apartments 4 times, witnessed 2 domestic violence incidents, suffered 3 untreated ear infections, was reported missing once for 18 hours before being found behind a closed dumpster. Alone. There was no birthday party until he turned 6. There were no consistent medical records between ages 3 and 7. He entered kindergarten unable to write his name. Blank. Underscore. Blank. School red flags. Mrs. Doreen Collins, Cameron's first grade teacher, submitted 3 behavioral referrals in 1 month. He once punched a classmate for touching his crayons. Another time, he tore a bird in half on the playground and smiled while doing it. He was referred to counseling, but the district had no full-time school psychologist. A part-time intern saw him twice, noted emotional dysregulation, and closed the file due to non-attendance by parent. In 2015, Cameron's stepfather, Ricky, moved in. That's when things got darker. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Inside the home, neighbors on Jefferson Street often heard shouting from inside the Ray apartment. Police were called 6 times in 18 months. 1911 recording from September 6, 2016. Dispatcher. What's happening? Caller. Neighbor. There's a kid screaming. And something just hit the wall. I think they're hurting him. Dispatcher. Do you hear any weapons? Caller. No, but I hear belts. Like snapping. It's awful. Police came. No one opened the door. They left. Blank. Underscore. Blank. His father returns, briefly. When Cameron was 9, his biological father resurfaced, served with back child support orders. He visited once. At a Burger King, Cameron was reported to have asked, "Are you real?" Brandon Knight never came back. The following week, Cameron threw a brick through the window of his school's front office. He said he wanted to make something break the way he felt. The principal reported, blank, underscore, blank, a failed system. From age 10 to 13, Cameron was referred to. 3 counselors, 2 never completed intake. 2 after-school mentorship programs, dropped out. 1 residential behavioral center, waitlisted, then denied due to lack of funding. Dr. Leo Marin, reviewing these files from prison, commented, "This wasn't neglect by one person. This was abandonment by an entire system. And abandoned children will either disappear or explode." Blank. Underscore. Blank. The turning point. In November 2020, 4 months before the murder, Helen Carter began noticing disturbing shifts in Cameron. He spoke less. He drew faces with the eyes scratched out. He once asked her, "Do you ever think about just ending people?" She told him not to come back unless he apologized. He didn't. Instead, he returned that night and left dead flowers on her porch. She didn't report it. "I thought it was a cry for help," she said to her neighbor the next day. Not a warning. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Psychological profile. Dr. Elaine Whitford later compiled a full forensic profile for court. It included oppositional defiant disorder, attachment disorder, possible emerging antisocial traits, below average verbal IQ, high emotional volatility. But what stood out most was this. When asked to name someone he felt truly safe with, Cameron paused for 14 seconds, then said, "No one, not even me." Blank. Underscore. Blank. Nature versus nurture? In one of the most controversial chapters of the case, a research group from the University of Chicago published a paper. Case study. The Making of a Juvenile Offender, a Multisystemic Collapse. They concluded, Cameron's crime was preventable. Structural poverty, educational failure, and domestic trauma all contributed. But ultimately, Cameron made the choice. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back to the house. A forensic technician revisiting the Carter home 6 months later noticed something odd. Behind a bookshelf, buried in a plastic envelope, was a single note. "Cameron, you are loved. You are not your worst thought. Don't let the darkness win. I will always care. Ms. Carter." It was dated March 3, 2021, 6 days before her death. She had written it, left it for him. He never saw it. Jefferson Correctional Center, March 9, 2040. Exactly 19 years since Helen Carter's murder. The gates clanged open with a metallic groan. Outside, spring winds scattered dust across the parking lot. Inside, in a sterile hearing room with plastic chairs and fluorescent lights, a man in a beige jumpsuit was led in. Inmate 643881B, Cameron Ray, was now 34 years old. His hair was graying at the temples. There was a scar across his right cheek, no one knew from where. But the eyes hadn't changed. Still deep, still distant, blank, underscore, blank. The setting. The Missouri Board of Probation and Parole held their hearing in a private room. Away from media, under state confidentiality law. But the tension inside was heavier than any camera flash. 3 board members, 1 prison advocate, 1 attorney from the state, and 2 guests allowed by law. Maggie Dawson, Helen Carter's niece. Brian Lowell, now 53, a former student of Helen's, who had helped fund the Literacy Center. Blank, underscore, blank. The procedure. Chairperson Marilyn Greer began. Mr. Ray, you have served 19 years and are eligible for parole consideration. This hearing will assess your rehabilitation, risk factors, and expressions of remorse. Cameron nodded once. He had waited for this moment, rehearsed it in his mind 1,000 times. But when the time came, he didn't read from a script. He just spoke. Blank, underscore, blank. Cameron's statement. I've thought about what I did every day. Not just the act, but the moments before. What she said, what I felt, and the silence after. The worst part, when I realized what I'd become. He paused. You want to know if I'm sorry? I am. But sorry is easy. I wish I had been stopped. I wish I had been seen sooner. But I did what I did. I ended a life. A good one. I won't ask for your forgiveness. I haven't earned it. He looked directly at Maggie Dawson. But I will never forget her. Blank, underscore, blank. Maggie's response. Maggie, now in her 60s, stood with composure. She held up a worn envelope. This is the last birthday card my aunt ever wrote. It was for my grandson, Adam. She wrote, may your heart always be open to others, even when the world tells you to close it. She looked at Cameron. You closed your heart. You destroyed a life. And now you ask for yours back. She stepped closer to the board. He's articulate. He's calm. Maybe even remorseful. But don't mistake that for redemption. We don't get Helen back. Not ever. She sat down. The room was silent. Blank, underscore, blank. The vote. The board deliberated for 47 minutes. Then Chairperson Greer returned and read. By majority vote, the Missouri Board of Probation and Parole denies parole for Cameron Ray. The inmate will be eligible for reconsideration in 10 years. Per SB 288 guidelines. Cameron showed no visible reaction. He simply nodded once, as if he'd always known this would be the answer. Blank, underscore, blank. Outside the prison, reporters waited outside the gates, behind barricades. When the result was leaked hours later, the reactions were swift. Some said justice had been preserved. Others called it a sign of a system unwilling to forgive. A local paper ran the headline, No Mercy on Carter Way. Blank, underscore, blank. Later that night, in his cell, Cameron wrote in his latest notebook, March 9, 2040. I don't hate them for saying no. I wouldn't have said yes either. Maybe 10 years from now, I'll be better at carrying this weight. He placed the notebook beside his bed, closed his eyes, and whispered, Good night, Ms. Carter. Webb City, Missouri, March 9, 2041. 1 year after Cameron Ray's first parole hearing was denied, the town gathered in the same place it always did this time of year. The Helen Carter Literacy Center, on the corner of what used to be Sycamore Lane. The center now served over 400 children annually. There were shelves lined with donated books, reading circles every Saturday, and a stained glass window installed in 2035, depicting Helen in her armchair. Book in lap, cat at her feet. This year, they unveiled a new plaque near the entrance. She believed words could save lives, even when they couldn't save hers. Blank, underscore, blank. The ones WHO remembered. Maggie Dawson, now 65, spoke briefly at the ceremony. My aunt lived with faith, not just the kind you preach, but the kind you practice. She believed every person mattered, even the boy who took her life. She paused. And maybe that's the part one struggle with most. She forgave him long before I ever could. Tears welled in her eyes. But she didn't break. Blank, underscore, blank. A letter never mailed. 3 months later, during a routine library inventory, A volunteer found an envelope tucked into the back cover of a 1989 teacher's guidebook. It was sealed, the handwriting neat and unmistakable. To be opened only if something happens to me. H. Carter. They opened it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Inside the letter. If you're reading this, I suppose something awful has happened. And if it involved Cameron, please don't let hate write the final chapter. He is not just what he did. He is what we allowed to happen, by looking away, by cutting budgets, by failing to see the boy behind the behavior. I do not want vengeance. I want understanding, accountability, yes, but not annihilation, not for a child who was never shown how to be anything else. Please, let my name stand for light, not for loss. It was signed, Helen Louise Carter, March 7, 2021, 2 days before her death. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A man in a cell. Back at Jefferson Correctional Center, Cameron Ray received a copy of the letter through his prison counselor. He read it slowly, 3 times. Then, for the first time in over a year, he wrote a letter of his own. Not to the parole board. Not to Maggie, but to a 12-year-old boy at the literacy center who had sent him a drawing of Helen's stained glass window. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Cameron's letter. You said you didn't know who she was. She was the best person I ever knew. She helped kids who no one else saw. I made a mistake that can't be undone. And I live with it every day. But you don't have to. You still have time to be someone she'd be proud of. Read every book she ever touched. That's how I remember her. That's how we keep her here. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The final image. A quiet town. A library full of children. A window glowing with light through Helen's smile. And a cell, miles away, where a man sits alone, writing one truth at a time. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Because the silence on Sycamore Lane was never about what was missing. It was about what we refused to hear, until it was too late.